This is our newest bender product, and it is a 2.5 to 4 inch hydraulic bender. And you can kind of look at it and see, hopefully it comes over really well, but this is really overbuilt for what it is. It is gonna be able to bend 2.5, 3.5, and 4 inch rigid IMC and EMT. And it does that courtesy of this big bazooka here, okay? So I'm gonna show you one of the coolest features of this bender right out of the gate. And really it is that I don't have to have extra help to manually lift this, okay? So, that actually comes up by itself and it locks into place. So you'll see how much more rigid that is, okay? That's gonna help me get more accurate bends, more consistent bends than anything else up in the market, right? And we'll talk about some of those feature advantages a little bit more as we kind of go a little bit more hands-on with it. Next thing it says, so you can actually see this is actually bolted up in. So we actually use a longer travel cylinder with a larger cylinder bore. That allows us to be able to bend any conduit size, whether that's the 2.5 all the way up to the 4, without adjusting the ram height, okay? A lot of what's out there in the market requires me not only to manually lift this, but then also to adjust the height of this hydraulic ram up and down in order to get to the right shoe size and sled size that I need to bend the conduit. So I don't have to do that here. Next thing this actually allows me to do using this powerhouse is actually use a different hydraulic pump setup. So this uses a 3,000 PSI pump. And that 3,000 PSI pump does a couple of things. One, it means that I'm not putting as much wear and tear on my system, okay? I'm using a lower pressure setting than a 10,000 PSI system, which means my hoses, my seals, everything about this system is gonna last longer. It's gonna outperform. It's gonna be a lot better than what you're gonna find in a 10,000 PSI system. Second, it allows me to use a dual acting cylinder. So this cylinder actually has the power to extend and retract itself, okay? A lot of 10,000 PSI systems out there use a return spring. So the first time I overload that spring overextends, and then it doesn't retract as far. And so then after, 2-3 years of use, instead of the cylinder doing the work, I'm doing the work. So it'll do the bending portion of it, but then I've got to manually lift up my 4-inch shoe, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of the unit. This unit, because it's dual acting, has the power to raise it and lower it. Next thing it does is it actually generates about the same amount of bending force, a little bit more than the 10,000 PSI systems because I use a larger bore cylinder. That gives me additional bending force that will allow me to bend all the way up to that 4-inch consistently. So again, as we go up in size, that wall thickness, that heavy weight of the conduit actually increases time and time again. And so this is gonna have the power to push right through that. Next thing that allows me to do is also have that second cylinder that raises and lowers the unit. So I have a lower speed cylinder just so I don't get too out of control. That actually allows me to raise this in a nice smooth speed, get it up there, lock it into place. And the cylinder actually maintains pressure. That's what gives me some of the rigidity. And then again, this locking mechanism that you saw me pushing forward locks it even more. And that makes sure that, again, I don't have that back-to-back, and more importantly, I don't have that side-to-side. So we talked a lot about compound bends, okay? But in compound bends, I'm more looking out for dogging. That's where my pipe is not bent at perfect angles to each other, and that's gonna stack up over the course of a full run of conduit. With this unit, because I have that rigidity, I'm not having to worry about not hitting my bend angle. I'm also not having to worry about my dog as my ram moves side to side when I start to do a bend. And we can talk a little bit more about what that looks like as we go through it. Next thing that we go ahead and done, we've changed the way that our vise here goes on. So when we're trying to fix the pipe, we want to hold that pipe really stiff so that we get consistent high quality bends. And our unit has a rail that actually runs all the way right up against the ram. So that means that when I'm loading up my conduit, if I am doing a compound bend, I don't have to try and get right to the very edge of the pipe with my pipe vise. I can have my pipe vise anywhere along because it can run all the way up to the main bending roller. So a couple of big advantages there. Next thing you'll note is just the transportability of this. So this has really nice, large 12-inch cast wheels. That's going to be really robust and help you get around, as well as 2 cast swivel wheels on the back, so it's more mobile there. And then it's got actual fork pockets down below. Those are actual full-size fork pockets that are going to work with any standard forklift or any Lowell, anything like that. So you can pick it up and get it where you need to. And the next thing you'll note is, again, we focus on storage. So one of the big things that this tool has is the ability to access everything, easily do an inventory on it. So I can look right at this and I can go, okay, all my sleds are here, all my shoes are here, all my collars are here. I don't have to remove anything from the unit or pull it away to try and identify what's there. It's all easily right there, accessible. When you look at this versus a traditional setup, you're going to go from a 7 to 10 minute setup on a traditional unit to really a 2 to 3 minute setup on this, which is just night and day savings, right? Next couple of things that we've gone ahead and done to make this a little bit better. I'm actually going to start setting this up a little bit. So here's my 2.5-inch sled. You'll note I have a rest right there at the front that's not typical on this style of bender. That allows me to slide that right in without having to fight it or try and hold it out in front of myself. Those are very heavy to do. But before I do that, I'll talk about a couple of other things here. You'll see that these ears are actually bolted on. And what those ears do is it prevents this from falling out, so it can hang out there, so when I get to the end of the bend, it's not going to fall out. The nice part is, on traditional benders that are out there in the market, this is cast all into one piece, which is great until I go to move this and I bang it and I knock that ear off, and then I no longer have that piece and I have to purchase this whole replacement. That piece is a piece that takes abuse, so we've gone ahead and made it replaceable, made it a lot easier to do. Next thing you'll know, again, when you look at a traditional bender, this cylinder being in its highest position, I would have to adjust it down in this yoke in order to be able to do 2.5 inch. I've loaded up my 2.5 inch sled. I don't have to do that with this unit. I can use my pendant here to go ahead and bring that ram down. You'll note this is the same aluminum pendant that we use on all of our power benders. It means it's interchangeable. I have less parts that are going to break, but I have also less part stock that I have to keep in. It uses the same cord, so I can plug it right in. And in fact, while I'm talking about it, it uses a very similar electronic setup driving the pump. So again, I'm limiting those parts that are going to fail. I'm using parts that are known to us. I'm using parts that are going to be incredibly resistant to the job sites that these are going into. So I'll go ahead and I'll extend that out. Got to power it on. There's a power switch on the front of it. I'm just going to get it in the ballpark so you can see how it extends out. And while I'm extending it out here, you'll see that there's a nice little scale. So again, repeatability is a big thing when we're bending conduit, being able to do that. This scale is a nice scale, so I can see and I can set measurements. So if I know, hey, at 10 inches, that's where I'm going to start my 2.5 inch bend. I'm going to end my 2.5 inch bend at a 90 at 16 inches. I can go ahead and do that, or I can take my permanent marker or my expo marker. I can go, okay, this is my start, this is my finish point. All right. Magnet. So I can stick it right to the front of the unit. Stick it to anywhere that's metal, which fortunately there's a lot of metal here. They're bending shoes, they've got a nice grip, and so you'll note they have 2 different holes, one for rigid, one for EMT. And I can put this right in here. Bad part about the magnet and sticking it anywhere is I can lose it just as easy, right? tool tray right over here on top of my control panel that allows me to store everything right off to the side so I know right where it's at. Slide the pin all the way in. Lock it into place. Okay. Now I can lift it up again. This is a nice new unit. If you look at like an older, more beat up traditional bender, that return spring might wear out. So there's no powered return. So you literally might have to sit here and push that ram up a little bit. This one I can just press the button and it'll pull it right up. These are the collars. So the collar is actually what grips the conduit, holds it tight to the shoe, and allows us to maintain that bend angle. The collar has a couple of advantages here. One, it's the same pin setup, so I would just pin it right to that. Now when I'm talking about setting up this bender, I'm having a really easy go at it right now because I'm not loading any conduit in, but typically I'm having to manage 3 or 4 things. One, I need to make sure that this sled is in the general vicinity of where it needs to be. I need to make sure this shoe is in the general vicinity of where it needs to be. I need to make sure my conduit is more or less in the vicinity of where it needs to be. I'll have to make some adjustments. And then I need to try and align this and that. And so all of those things I'm having to do at the same time, and I'll show you what that looks like with our unit, because it's a little bit different. So again, with the traditional bender, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be trying to align all of these things at once, okay? This is 2.5 inch EMT. This is the lightest pipe that I'm going to use with this type of bender. I have an additional pinhole right here that allows me to hook my collar onto my conduit. It just gives me a little bit of assistance so I'm not having to fight it. In the larger sizes, that's going to make more of a difference. If I'm bending repeated bends back to back, I might load it from the back to do that. If I'm doing compound bends or something else, having that pin there to assist me just makes it a little bit easier for me not having to manage that collar as well, okay? I can go ahead and get that bend in there. I did not bring my protractor over, so I'm going to eyeball it here. Again, I'm able to get a good, high quality, consistent bend across the unit.